So as we're swinging back into a recession, I'm also seeing a lot of people regressing when it comes to like the body positivity and fat phobia takes. But it's really important that you as a leftist, regardless of your personal feelings, acknowledge that fat people as a group are oppressed in our current society. That's not up for debate, that's just true.
Not up for debate? Well, that's too bad, because I'm ready to have one.
It's very systemic and it's like very obvious too.
Systemic? Since when? Our society has a history of oppressing people of color, disabled people, gay people, but I don't think that we have a history of oppressing fat people. By claiming that the oppression is systemic, that means that it stems from some system. And we had laws preventing people of color from advancing in this world. We had genocidal attempts to eradicate disabled people. And we had laws preventing gay people from getting married. These are examples of systemic oppression. I don't recall a point in history where we ever specifically tried to prevent fat people from advancing in the world. Those laws never existed. Discrimination, sure, that has happened. I will give you that. Fat people have been treated unfairly in our history and to current day. And not to make bad treatment correct, because it isn't correct, but by using big words like oppression, we're really diluting the meaning of the word. Enduring teasing is not the same as being oppressed. Facing bigotry is also not the same as being oppressed. These are shitty things that happen, but they're still not the same as being oppressed. Iris Marion Young wrote a really interesting book on the 5 faces of oppression, and she qualified them as exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. Then she created this oppression scoring key of 0 to 5, where 0 was absent and 5 would be like state-based or caste-like. And for each of the facets of oppression, in order to be considered oppressed, you would need to score a 3 or higher. So a 3 would be considered multi-institutional. In summary, it goes like this. 0 is absent, 1 is minimal or localized, 2 is sectoral or partial, 3 is multi-institutional, 4 is societal-wide structure, and 5 is state-backed or caste-like. So with that information, if you want to graph what oppression looks like, comparing racism from the 1950s, racism now, discrimination based on sexual orientation pre-gay marriage, and discrimination based on sexual orientation now, and fat phobia in the 1950s and 60s versus fat phobia now. And when considering all the different facets of oppression, we can see that people of color had it very, very bad and were very much oppressed. We can also see that gay people were also very much oppressed. We can see that over time, things have improved, but we're still not perfect, but things have been moving in the right direction. But we can also see that fat phobia or obese people have never, ever come close to being oppressed. We can say that they are discriminated against. We can say that they face bigotry. But the word oppressed, that's a bridge too far. And please, the next time you use a word like systemic, know what it means, because fat people's oppression didn't stem from any systems.
I mean, just look at the fashion industry. Look at the way that they size clothing and what is considered a large, and where most fashion brands will tap out providing clothing sizes for people. It's not functionally that much more expensive to go from like a 2X to a 4X, especially if you're a giant fucking fast fashion company. But a lot of companies don't want to do it because it's a little bit more expensive to use that much fabric, and also they don't want their company associated with fat people. They don't want fat people wearing their clothes. Also, look at the way that brands will do regular lines of clothing and then plus size lines of clothing. Everything they fucking can to cover plus size people up. There's less skin, there's more ruffles, there's fuck ass bows on everything.
Who are you to say that it's functionally not that much more expensive? because I've done the research and the markup that they put on plus size clothing is pretty much exactly what it costs more for them to do the bigger sizes. First of all, I'm going to defend Samira here. A 1X is not the same thing as an XL, just like a 2X is not the same thing as a double XL, and a 3X is not the same thing as a triple XL. Why? Because a 2XL and a 3XL are the same as the straight sizes, just made bigger. It's the same pattern made bigger. But plus size clothing has a completely different pattern. True plus size clothing is not the straight size, just bigger. It has different dimensions. The hips are fuller, the bust is fuller. They have a whole different pattern. They do reinforced stitching. They use different zippers. They use different buttons, and they need different fit models. It is more expensive to do a true plus size. That is the reason why a lot of brands top out at like a double XL, or maybe even they'll do a triple XL, but they won't do a 3X, because a triple XL is based on their straight size. It's their straight size made bigger. 1X, 2X, 3X, and 4X, that's a different pattern. It's a completely different pattern than their straight size. And when you do the research, you will find that the cost difference making a new pattern, having different materials, having a different fit model. This is about a 15% markup, and that is what you're paying for. I have a really hard time understanding why in clothing we have a difficult time with paying for what we get. Because we do this with everything else. If I go to the ice cream parlor and I want 1 scoop of ice cream and my husband wants 2 scoops, who has to pay more? He does, because he's getting 2 scoops. Is it functionally that much more hard for the person working at the ice cream parlor to scoop twice than it is to scoop once? No, it probably takes her another 20 seconds. But I get less than he does, so I pay less. He gets more, so he pays more. Another really great comparison is bed sheets. Now, you can't ask for a more similar pattern. You cannot ask for a more similar product that the only difference is size. Because think about a twin sheet versus a double versus a queen versus a king. They all have the same elastic sewn on the corners. They all have the same hem at the top. The only difference is the amount of fabric that you get, the amount of linen that you get. That is the only difference. And we pay more by the size. A double costs more than a twin. A queen costs more than a double, and a king costs more than a queen. Why? Because we get more material. We get more stuff. It costs more to make. If we accept these price differences in other things, why can we not accept them in clothes? I personally would have no problem if a size 2 was priced different than a 4, than a 6, than an 8, than a 10. If they wanted to do that, fine. I understand why. But for clothing, they've decided to take the average cost, and we just know that the smaller sizes, they make more of a margin on than the bigger sizes. But introducing plus sizes into the whole pricing scheme isn't fair because it's a different product. It's a completely different product. Over the past several years, plus size content creators have been making a lot of noise online about wanting to have more plus sizes available in stores. And brands did try to respond. Old Navy tried to do their whole size inclusive line and make all prices equal, but guess what? Their stuff didn't sell. Whenever these brands try to do plus size lines, they typically end up losing money. And businesses have continued to cite that the demand simply isn't there in the plus size market. And although the average American woman is plus size, I kind of understand why all of the trendy plus size clothes don't sell. And that's because nobody wants to wear them. Because as much as TikTokers want you to believe that the average plus size woman is sad because she doesn't have access to trendy clothes, that is not the truth. Because survey results have shown that real plus size women are not chasing trends. They're chasing comfort, material, fit, and don't really care about having the latest styles. Now, I'm going to share a personal story, and by no means am I trying to project how I feel onto all of you, but this might be a reason why plus sizes are not selling in all of the trendy brands. Okay, so for me personally, I'm not a big person, but I do swing up and down a 25-pound yo-yo. And when I'm at the top of my yo-yo, I'm like a size 8 pushing a size 10. I don't shop when I'm that size. And that doesn't mean that there aren't clothes available in that size. There are. I can always find clothes in my size. I just don't like how clothes look on me when I'm a size 8 or a size 10. I just don't. So when I am that big, I either just wear what's in my closet. And when I say wear what's in my closet, I got stuff that's over 20 years in my closet. For example, this t-shirt is over 20 years old. I still wear it. My body hasn't changed that much. It's still holding up. It's still together. I wear a lot of really, really old clothes. So I just choose not to shop when I am that size because new clothes are not so much fun to buy when you don't like how they look on you. But when I'm down to like a size 2 or a 4, I love shopping because I like me at that size, and when I go shopping, everything looks good. So for me personally, I don't shop a lot when I'm not happy with how I look. When I'm not happy with how I look, I just want comfort. I want leggings, t-shirts, sweatshirts. And for me, most of the time, I can just get away with what's in my closet. Stuff that's 20 years old, I don't care. If it doesn't have a hole in it, I can still wear it. But the cute and fun clothes, I only have the urge to shop for those when I'm happy with my body. So I don't want to project that this is the reason why trendy plus size clothing doesn't sell, but it might be a contributing factor. There could be a whole lot of women out there like me that are just not interested in shopping for trendy looks when they're overweight, when they're not happy with their bodies. Therefore, the idea of buying a size 18 crop top is completely unappealing to them. But once they get down to a size 4 or 6, that crop top starts to look a whole lot better. So whenever I hear the arguments about how plus size clothing, it isn't cute, it isn't attractive, it isn't trendy, I tend to wonder, the average plus size consumer, do they actually want that? Because I don't think they do.
Public transportation, often not built for even like straight sized bodies, frankly. Often the seats are as small as possible to conserve space. So if you're a fat person and you need to take public transportation, God forbid you need to fly, you're in a really uncomfortable position.
I think that public transportation by law has to have accessible seating. And I think that all the public transportation that I've ever been on has a section that has bench seating. So that bench seating can fit obese people or disabled people or anyone that has trouble fitting onto a bus or a train. So I believe that accessible seating already does exist. The amount, I'm not sure. I think it varies from vehicle to vehicle. But yeah, accessible seating already does exist. And as far as flying goes, flying is a privilege, not a right. Private companies are allowed to do whatever they want. And if you want to consume that service, you can either pay for extra seats or lose the weight so that you fit more comfortably in your seat. That's your choice.
There's also been a number of studies done showing that fat people tend to struggle more socially, often in ways that like can hurt their career and their livelihood. But again, I shouldn't need to tell you this because I think all of us have probably witnessed the effects of fat phobia since we were children. I should not need to tell most people that, like, fat kids deal with a lot more harassment from their peers. That's just an observable fact.
Studies have shown that obese employees, in particular women, are frequently paid 7 to 9% less than their counterparts that are of a healthy weight. Similar studies have also shown that obese employees are 7 to 9% less productive than their counterparts of a healthy weight. Is this discrimination, or is this being paid for what you do? Smokers have had similar issues to obese people. Employers don't want to hire smokers because they take more sick days, they take more breaks, and they make more claims on the insurance. These things are true. Similar studies have been done on obese employees, and they too take more sick days, are less productive when they are present, and have more claims on the insurance. These are facts. And these are deterrents for an employer wanting to hire someone. Because don't employers want to get the most out of their people, and they want to get the most productive people? I'm going to tell you another personal story, and you can decide if this was fat phobia or not. I was once hired as a IT trainer over someone that had equivalent experience to me, but was overweight. Our resumes were pretty darn similar, but the biggest difference was that I was in shape and he wasn't. Now, being an IT trainer is not an extremely physically demanding job, but you are on your feet quite a bit, and you do have to speak in a loud voice for most of the day. And the other guy, he was getting winded in his interview, okay? He was having a hard time getting out all he needed to say in the interview without getting hot, without sweating, without needing to take a breath. So the person doing the hiring is observing that we have one candidate that can speak clearly, is not struggling to breathe, is not struggling to move, can easily fit through the aisles in the classroom. And then we have someone else who, although has a similar experience in education, is struggling to breathe, struggling to move, and has the employer questioning whether or not they can actually endure an entire day of training, let alone a week of training. In the end, the employer chose me over the other person. So, was it fat phobic? We had similar experience, but the biggest difference was physical fitness. I demonstrated that I was capable of speaking in a loud voice for a long period of time without tiring myself out. So, was that me getting a job based on my skills? Or was that me experiencing thin privilege? Obesity does affect your job performance. So I don't think that it's fair to say that any discrepancy in pay of obese versus healthy weight people is telling of discrimination, because it could be a result of simply not being able to do your job as well, and therefore you're paid less.
Also, you know what, especially as a woman, being really, really thin and calorie counting and constantly thinking about your weight makes you much easier to control. The thinner you are, the smaller you are, the less space you take up, literally, and the weaker you are. Also, from somebody who personally has a long history of eating disorders, it takes a lot of mental energy to constantly be thinking about your weight and constantly be thinking about your food. There is a lot of shit going on right now. You need to be paying attention. You need to be feeding your brain. Your brain and body need calories, and they need fat to run properly. Your brain's mostly made of fat.
You are so close, yet so far. Yes, predators do go after people that they can control. But guess what? Obese women are at the top of that list of women they can control. I went through this in my video on Fat Fab Feminist, but being obese is not a dating filter. It actually paints a bigger target on you for predators. Predators go after obese women frequently because they can tell that they have low self-esteem and therefore are easier to control. But the other thing I want to draw attention to is, yes, you do need to have good nutrition to keep your mental acuity sharp. That is important. And yes, it is true that if you're hungry and stressed about food, you are going to be a little less sharp. But you know what makes you really, really not sharp? Junk food. If you eat a diet of junk food or ultra-processed food, your mental acuity is even less than if you were hungry. So I agree, good nutrition is important to keep your noggin functioning. But the key words here are good nutrition. Starving your brain is not good, but feeding it junk food is even worse. Also, it's a complete lie that you are free of food noise once you allow yourself to start eating freely. That's complete BS. If you watch those fat mukbangs, you will see how excited they get to eat and how eating maybe a piece of cheesecake is the most exciting, best thing that's happening to them that day. It's sad, it's scary, and it's very, very obvious that the food noise is still there and is still screaming at them. So just because you are no longer restricting does not mean that food noise is gone. In fact, I think it's a reason for the food noise to start having a party in your brain.
It's also worth noting that fat phobia has its roots deep in racism.
First of all, I don't think that fat phobia has its roots in racism. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had cultures like the Chinese, the Greeks, and the Romans documenting fatness as a bad thing where they weren't even considering race. But even if I were to say that, yes, fat phobia originated from slavery, that doesn't negate the good science that has come out of it. A lot of the good science that we have today has really, really ugly origins. Gynecology was studied in a very cruel manner. Doctors were testing on Black slaves without any pain medication because they believed that Black women didn't feel pain the same way as white women did. Germ theory was researched because of ignorance against other ethnicities and their smell. These are ugly origins, but we have better insight into how germs actually do spread now. We've been able to create medicines and vaccines from this knowledge. Women's healthcare in gynecology and obstetrics has also improved thanks to this science. But the origins of both are ugly as heck. We can chastise the manner that we went about getting our findings in the past without negating the science that was discovered while doing it. Discriminating against fat people just because we didn't like the look of them was wrong, but discovering that obesity kills is invaluable. Can we please stop conflating social justice with life-saving science? Science tries to eradicate diseases, not beings. And if we continue to let people identify with their disease, we will never be able to treat it. Blackness and homosexuality are not diseases. Obesity is.
Accepting and loving fat people and fat bodies, whether that is your own or the members of your community, is radical and will always be very important. Also, fat women are hot as hell and y'all are boring.
And we end with a virtue signal that shows to us that she is better than we are because she thinks that fat people are hot and the regular people are boring. But is it virtuous to lie? Obesity is a disease, and pretending that it's anything else is irresponsible. My name is Lydia, and this is the Body Honesty Project. And if you like this video, please subscribe.